Today's show is sponsored by DivvyCloud. DivvyCloud is a cloud security posture management platform that protects cloud and container environments from policy violations, threats, IAM challenges, and misconfigurations. The types of misconfigurations that cause data breaches and threaten the livelihood of enterprises across the globe. In the span of just 2 years, data breaches attributed to cloud misconfigurations have cost enterprises a jaw-dropping $5 trillion. Why? Because cloud security is often sacrificed in favor of innovation, speed, and agility. DivvyCloud is proving that security and innovation are not mutually exclusive. Join innovative enterprises like Spotify, Twilio, and Discovery, who have found the freedom to innovate securely without the loss of control. DivvyCloud provides continuous security and compliance across all cloud providers and containers, including AWS, GCP, Azure, Alibaba, and Kubernetes, providing a comprehensive view of what's in your cloud, along with the tools and automation you need to manage it today, tomorrow, and well into the future, as your business needs grow and change. To learn more, visit divvycloud.com/cloudcast. That's DIVVYCLOUD.com/cloudcast to sign up for a free trial. DivvyCloud. Find your freedom to innovate.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Wanted to dive straight into cloud news of the week. We've got some interesting things this week. A little bit of funding, a little bit of acquisitions, and a little bit of transformation of business as well. First up in news of the week, we have a funding round, a C-Series funding round. Dremio Corporation, who, if you're not familiar with them, they do self-service analytics. Took a $70 million C round, and business seems to be doing well. And what are they, though? They are, think of it as... You've got the big data lakes out there, right? Amazon Web Services data lake and Microsoft's Azure data lake. And how do you dig into those? And how do you also take those analytics and take it one step further? Now, I will say this, and it even is called out specifically in the announcement. Given the status of the situation in the world, go-to-market motions may not be what they once were. And so what they're looking to do is take this funding round and batten down the hatches for probably 2 to 3 years and work on product and make the product better and come out of the other end looking hopefully for the best. And we certainly wish them well. For our second article, it looks like Microsoft is getting into the telecom business. So Microsoft, and specifically the Azure Networking Group, acquired a 5G company, Affirmed Networks. And, in digging into the press release on this one, because, at first I kind of scratched my head wondering about this, but it probably makes sense, right? They're getting into the business of, telecom and wireless and how can we, they start to control that last mile, if you will. How can they control better delivery of the network experience? And Affirmed Networks was really good. They already have a virtualized stack, virtualized networking, and how can they bring that technology into the Microsoft fold? This will be a really, really interesting space to watch as we go forward. And with that, we'll move on to our third story here for the week. The third story is just kind of a blurb. We always have followed Kubernetes on this show and wanted to make sure everyone knew about the Kubernetes 1.18 release. And this one is a couple things about this. It's, first of all, the first release of 2020, so yay. But in addition to that, though, this one is really more of what they're calling a fit and finish release. A lot of work going into improving both the beta features and the stable features. And this goes to show efforts made by the community to improve the reliability of Kubernetes and, over time, continue to expand out the functionality as well. And lastly, we have kind of an addition from our good friends over at A Cloud Guru. they have announced the ability to take exams online through AWS. So AWS announced the expansion of online proctored exams. And so if you wanted to maintain an AWS certification or go obtain an AWS certification, you can go to A Cloud Guru to both study for those exams as well as take those exams as well. If you wanted to do Azure, Azure has been doing this for some time now. And then GCP hopefully will be coming before too much longer as well. And kudos to A Cloud Guru to continue to be that one-stop shop for learning and moving yourself forward in your career. And with that, we're going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week and have a really interesting interview coming up on security and SecOps.
Today's show is brought to you by MongoDB. When you need to focus on building applications, do you want to get bogged down by your database? Definitely not. MongoDB is an intuitive, flexible document database that lets you get to building. MongoDB's document model is a natural way to represent data so you can focus on what matters. And MongoDB Atlas is the best way to use MongoDB. It's a global cloud database service that gives you all the developer productivity of MongoDB, plus the added simplicity of a fully managed database service. You can get started for free with MongoDB Atlas at mongodb.com/atlas. That's mongodb.com/atlas. Today's Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog, a cloud-scale monitoring service that provides comprehensive visibility into cloud, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments with over 350 integrations. Datadog unifies your metrics, logs, and distributed request traces in one platform so that you can investigate and troubleshoot issues across every layer of your stack. Use Datadog's rich, customizable dashboards and algorithmic alerts to ensure redundancy across multi-cloud deployments and monitor cloud migrations in real time. Try Datadog for yourself with a free trial, and you receive a complimentary t-shirt. That 14-day trial can be found just by going to datadog.com/cloudcast. That's datadog.com/cloudcast.
And we're back. We have a really, really interesting guest and topic this week. We have with us this week Nati Hazut, co-founder and CEO of Polyrize. Nati, you have a really interesting background in both the Israeli military as well as cybersecurity. Can you give everyone a quick introduction, please?
Sure. So, hi, Aaron. And first of all, thank you for having me in this great podcast. Really exciting. And so about my background, I think when I started in the cybersecurity space, it wasn't that sexy. It was just computer security. And it was, I think, the intelligence force. This is where I started this journey. I served there for 7 years. As an officer in many different roles. It was a very fascinating time because I had this ability to experience so many different type of aspects of cybersecurity, starting from networking to IoT and always internal. And you know, after serving in the army, I made my first step into the entrepreneurship world, which was my first company, Sam Seamless Network. So it was an IoT security company. We were selling a security solution for service provider to provide an enterprise-grade security solution for home users who don't have the awareness for security, but we believe that they truly need it. So that was my first company. And the second company is Polyrize, which I'm really excited, that we're going to discuss about it today. And the Polyrize is kind of the evolution and the journey that I think that cybersecurity we're going through in the recent years. How everything goes to the cloud. So I started from the low level malware-based hardcore security solutions. And today I'm just I think in the other side of the cybersecurity threat map, which is the cloud.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you. And so Nati, I will completely admit, so Brian and I we do not come from security backgrounds, and historically we haven't talked about it as much on the show. And so some of our listeners may just be learning. So let's kind of start at the start. We hear lots of ops terms in our industry, DevOps and some of these others, and there's also SecOps. So let's start there. What is your definition of SecOps and why is it so important today?
Sure. So I think SecOps, first of all, is about getting security as part of the development life cycle. So if you compare it to the past, it used to be a very siloed process developing software. So the developer start writing its code, start creating the product. When it needs help, he goes to the IT guy, he goes to the DBA, the database administrator. But and the security team, they were not invited, but at a certain point of time they will knock on the door and will ask some questions, and then they will try to fix whatever they can fix because the product is already done. But when it comes to the cloud and everybody wants to get the line of code from the moment that the software developer just wrote it, they want to get it faster as they can into the product, into production. So there's this DevOps effort to make it go really, really fast. Now, when you go fast, you might make a devastating errors that in the past you used to have this time for security team to check it. In order to gain this speed, but still be making it in a responsible way, you got to have security as part of the process. You got to have the security team understand what's going on with the developers, with the process, with the infrastructure. So SecOps is basically making security by design part of the development lifecycle, so you can maintain this speed that you got today with the DevOps guy, but you can do it in a secured and responsible way.
Yep. And it's funny because I'm kind of having flashbacks to, projects I've been involved in the past. And I just keep thinking about it. It's like, okay, developers working on something, they get it going and they're like, yep, okay, it works, push it to production.
And
and that's, that's the last thing we want to do in this instance. And so that, that's certainly one aspect of, SecOps. Another one, you recently published an article, in Security Boulevard, and we have a link in the show notes, so everyone go check it out, on this concept of non-human entities in the cloud. And I found this super fascinating. Can you tell everyone what that expression means and why it is so important in a cloud and SaaS-based world?
Sure. So thank you for mentioning that. So the non-human identities in the cloud is basically, when we're talking about identities and we're talking about securing identities in the cloud, so we tend to think we're talking about humans, and we're talking about employees, users, but in fact, when we're talking about cloud applications, there are many access tokens, API keys. We mentioned DevOps and SecOps, so they have their own automation processes running through a non-human machines that are running over time, and basically, when you're not aware of them, this could be very risky for the organization. And usually you'll be surprised to see how many, they got a lot of privileges, they can do a lot of actions. And one good example, or bad example if you want, is the Capital One breach that happened I think 1 year ago. And for our listeners that they don't know what happened there, so I'll just say that there was an AWS role, a non-human role. The purpose of this role was to configure a firewall inside the AWS infrastructure, where in fact this role has the capability to access customers' data. So eventually what happened, an attacker managed to take over this role and then exfiltrate data from the Capital One cloud, which is a good reminder why, even though this role considered to be very very hard, very easy to profile and to classify like the actions that they're doing. They're doing the same actions. They're going through the same machines. It doesn't mean they're going to do it all the time, and you need to secure them and treat them in the same security controls that you're monitoring and treating humans today in the cloud. And
as kind of a follow-up to that, and kind of bringing back your company prior to this as well, another vector is when I think about this is I think about IoT, right? And we'll go into a discussion here in a little bit about kind of a perimeter model and some of these other forms of security. But when I think of IoT, I immediately think, okay, you've got an edge device, you've got an endpoint device, and there is no such thing as a perimeter anymore. And so what are some of the, top of mind thoughts when it comes to handling these kind of emerging models?
So you're talking about, so just to make sure I got the question, we're talking about identities outside the perimeter. Correct. Or like, correct. Okay, yeah, got it. Yeah, so I think, there's this saying for the last year since the ZeroTrust model is evolving. So they're saying identity is the new perimeter, I couldn't agree more. Basically, when you look for the common denominator in the new perimeter, it's not a physical borders. It's not where the data is stored because it's everywhere. So identity basically creates the new perimeter. And this is a huge challenge because when we think of security in the last 20 years and the way it was designed, it was all designed for the on-premise, for these physical borders. So we're just adding more and more layers for this perimeter. And even when we had remote access, it was a VPN that helps us access inside the perimeter. And suddenly, your most critical data is not inside a perimeter, it's out there. And your CRM is on Salesforce or Dynamics 365. So it's also out there. And you think to yourself, all these lines of defense that I built through these years, they're not that effective anymore. So now I need to make sure I can handle identities and privileges. And it's not a coincidence that Polyrize is just about these subjects addressing these challenges.
Yeah, and that's such a good point because, I come from the old secure the perimeter days, if you will, right? And then the monolithic application days. And as we move to both microservices with lots of interconnection points, as well as being in a SaaS world, and some of our data is in different systems, and we're having to stitch together more and more. The idea of the identity being the new perimeter, that's such a good point. Now, let me ask you, and maybe it goes back to the non-human entities portion again, and the Capital One breach specifically, but I would imagine automation and API-driven systems, and I kind of think as infrastructure as code, but there's so many other applications as well. This probably changes perspectives a good bit as well. And so, when it comes to identity management of non-people, right? And especially automation at scale, what are some of the factors that we have to consider in something like this?
Right. So I think the good news about it is being a non-human identity is that it's easier to predict what type of actions they can do. So respectively, it's easier to enforce what they shouldn't do. So the factors basically is first, analyzing and understanding what type of access these non-human identities can potentially access, or what kind of impact they can create on the service, and making sure it's in the right scopes and in the right borders. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is about learning the behavior. So I think same with my previous company with IoTs. So here's the same story with the non-human identities. One thing is that there are truly different from the humans they should treat differently. But on the other hand, it's easier to learn their baseline. It's easier to understand the way they behave. So if we'll take again the Capital One example, so if this role is configuring every day the same firewall or every month, but it's always the same type of actions for the same device, this is something that can be hardened. This is something that can be strictly monitored. So for your question, A is about evaluating the permissions, and B is about closely monitoring the actions that they're actually performing.
Yeah, good. Nati, now let me ask you a little bit more about your current endeavor, Polyrize, because we kind of brought all of this together and we kind of introduced some foundational concepts. What are the problems you are trying to solve with Polyrize?
Sure. So I think that in general, what we try to solve with Polyrize and when we created this company is it's about, who's accessing your most critical data in the cloud. And answering this question might sound, allegedly simple, but obviously, as we see, you got humans, you got non-humans identities. Now we see also external vendor as an evolving challenge, especially when another trend that we see of managed services is also getting inside the organization. So there are many types of identities who can access the data. And with Polyrize, we're addressing the challenge of helping the organization understand what type of access each identity has. Is it excessive? Does this identity has too much power? How they can impact the organization. So the first thing is about helping security teams understand what type of access each identity has. The second thing is to make sure the identity does not misuse the access that he has, because it could be the identity itself, but it also could be an outside attacker. And when you think about it, doing it for one service, this is a lot of effort from the security team, right? They need to maintain kind of like a spreadsheet that say what type of access each identity has, and when they want to monitor unwanted behavior, so they'll write scripts and queries in Splunk. But reality shows us that when you have so many different cloud services, security team just struggling to catch up to learn every service separately, it becomes a very tedious job to assess the access of identities, not to mention investigating incidents in the cloud. So basically what we did, we create a universal language that translates the access and the activity model of the different cloud services to allow security teams a unified focal point to control identities and their access in the cloud.
Okay. And a follow-up to that, are we trying to then, I always think of it as, okay, there's the day zero or day one model of okay, this is helping security organizations configure systems and secure multiple platforms. And then there's also the monitoring after the fact, the day 1+, right? What do you do on day 215, right? And is it a combination of configuration and a combination of monitoring and compliance of security over time? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Correct. I think that, with the shared responsibility model, right, we see that from the on-premise to the cloud, we had on-premise, then we had infrastructure as a service, then software as a service, and the next phase is even managed services. So what we see here is how the cloud providers like AWS and Salesforce, what they're saying is, we're going to take care of your of the infrastructure, of the security of the service. You don't need to worry about vulnerabilities and network-based attacks, but we're also going to give you keys, and you need to make sure you give the right keys to the right guys with the right amount of access. Because if you want, this is your problem. And the way you stated, I think that's exactly what we're doing. We're helping you, first of all, get this unified visibility, being proactive, and reduce the attack surface by revoking unused and risky privileges across the cloud. But also we're monitoring the way these identities are actually using their access to identify if there's any suspicious actions in the cloud. And I think a very interesting thing that I just ran into lately, CrowdStrike, they just published their 2020 cybersecurity report. And a very interesting thing that they say there is that this is the first year, 2020, where the malware-free attacks are more common than malware-based attack. And by saying malware-free, just to make it clear, they mean that you don't need any type of vulnerability, right? Phishing attacks, potential attacks. So what we see here is like, it's not about how you break in and exfiltrating data through vulnerability, is how the threat landscape goes to the login and post-login activity. And I think it's very fascinating to see how the market is changing there.
Yeah. And I would just add another kind of fascinating inflection point for me personally, and this probably goes into your most common use cases, is the challenges of securing multiple platforms. You're trying to, stitch together, if you will, for each identity. Okay, you have access to this SaaS service or this IaaS service, and they can be vastly different models as well. So providing that abstraction layer and this commonality is I'm assuming, and I'll kind of ask you, is that probably the biggest use case that folks are coming to you for right now?
Right. So I think being comprehensive is something that is very valuable. But in addition, I think that many cloud security solutions today, one of the problems is that they're providing a lot of data about actions, like just providing logs on the different services. And I think one of the greatest things that we did with Polyrize, this translation layer, allows you to enrich the context of what is actually happening. So you won't have just a pile of logs and you try to understand what it means on every service. Another thing that we identify is that when customers are using the product, they're asking, for example, let's say they have like an incident that they want to investigate. So they wouldn't ask for a specific user in a specific service. They would either say it's a specific role, for example, but it also could be an employee. And when they're asking about employee, they want to see the complete view of what type of permission this user has, what type of actions he did on every service. And they don't mind that this is like, different services. And then they start asking questions, right? So they want to see all the permission changes that this user did. And with just pile of logs, you need to understand and you need to learn before initiating the investigation, how enrollment look like on AWS, in Salesforce, in G Suite. So what we're helping them, and this is a great use case that we're helping with, is creating this unified layer so they can ask a single question and we're going to answer how it reflects with the different services.
Nati, that's such a good summary. Thank you. I think actually what we'll do is we'll kind of close on that. We're kind of out of time for today. Where can everyone find out more about you, about the company? Given the climate and the state of things, I wouldn't say where you're going to be at upcoming events. I think that's kind of on pause worldwide for just about everyone. But if somebody wanted to discover more about you online, where would they go?
Sure. So obviously our website, polyrize.com, and LinkedIn. Probably this would be the best way to catch up and see what's new with Polyrize.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. And as always, we will have links to everything in the show notes. On behalf of Brian, who wasn't able to make it this week, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.